because of the pandemic, UBI started to be talked about in a different way. And people started to see this as something that was important that we actually should have had before the pandemic happened, how positively that would have impacted everything to actually have that floor underneath people. We saw what happened when people suddenly had to go through the unemployment insurance systems state by state, and how some states were better than others. And we saw like massive food bank lines, and yet the grocery stores had food. Like it could have been so much better if we had a UBI. So I think people kind of felt that and see that now for themselves. Then we come out of this and people start complaining about there's a labor shortage, that nobody wants to work anymore. And they're blaming this on the stimulus. They're blaming it on unemployment and everything. But really, it's just kind of amazing that we actually were able to get where we are now as far as getting the labor participation rate back up. But at the time, as it's going back up, people are looking at a labor shortage, and they're just coming up with all kinds of stuff. And then at that point, automation became like a joke. Like, I thought it was crazy how, like, you were even like the butt of jokes of being like, oh, like Andrew Yang said that, everyone would be out of a job, and yet we can't find anyone to work. So, like, that was laughable. And so automation became like this joke. And then all of a sudden, I feel that all changed last November when ChatGPT launched. Like, that was a total game changer in the entire conversation, where suddenly people are like, "Oh my gosh, like this is serious. Like, AI can do some magical things." And so suddenly we're in this world where AI is just like, it's right there. It's like it's happening as we see it. It's happening in real time in a way that people were making fun of even just a year ago. And
well, one of the things I find frustrating, Scott, is like people are like, what do you mean automation? Like, people that can't find people to work. And it's like, well, those two things actually can happen at the same time. Like, companies can be investing gajillions of dollars in automating various roles, and you have a hard time getting people to show up for job X or job Y, particularly if those jobs are frankly punitive or undercompensated or whatever the heck the situation is. So I agree with you that the conversation definitely changed when ChatGPT came online. Everyone was like, wait a minute, this thing can do what I do. This thing scores an 88th percentile on the bar exam. It's like better than most attorneys probably manage. So for me, the trend has just been ongoing the whole time. I mean, even during COVID, when people were sent home, I saw one survey that said that almost half of companies said they were investing more in automation.
So it's been interesting. This is just like recently, just in the last, like, let's say week or so, you've seen like a lot of companies starting to like even clamp down on their API usage and saying, we don't want these large models to actually be using our data anymore. You should pay us, kind of thing. Nice. And so there's like these walls coming up. And so, on the one hand, you can think, well, okay, put up those walls and make sure that your users, get the money for it. But we all know that's not going to happen. Like, these walls, if they do that, they're just going to make sure that the company itself gets the money. It's going to help profits. It's going to help shareholders. It's not going to go down to the users. Users still don't get anything. And I think that it's important to communicate UBI as an AI dividend, in this, where we are now. Like, I think part of the barrier to UBI is people thinking, people are going to be left with nothing except for this like poverty floor level, basic income, and that's all that they'll get. And, speaking of it as a dividend, as you did in your campaign, gets people to see that, people think of a dividend as the better the company does, the better I do. And so, if you have a true dividend, let's say it's tied to GDP per capita, as productivity increases, as AI is able to become more and more capable, then the floor rises. And that floor can be seen as something that people, deserve, that it's earned. It's an earned dividend. It's not welfare. It's not something that somehow limits them. It's something that is supplementary to everything else that they do and is enabling of everything that they do, and continues to increase as the nation improves.
Hey, YouTube. Glad you're enjoying the podcast. If you really like it, hit subscribe, and then YouTube will notify you every time we have a bang up new guest. Thank you.